If you're watching this, there is a chance that you open your mailbox and you found an envelope from the IRS. And I know this is a very stressful experience. However, take a deep breath. This is not the end of the world. In this video, we will talk about a big picture of IRS notices, what their purpose, what to look for, and most importantly, what to do next. I'm Olena Ruth. I am tax attorney and founder of Ruth Tax Law, and I created this YouTube channel to help individuals, families, and small business owners to serve in the difficulties of the tax world and to resolve any tax issues that you have. So let's look at the different types of the IRS notices. I divide IRS notices into three categories: proposed changes and audit notices, balance due or assessment notices, and collection or post-assessment notices. So proposed changes audit notices. These are notices that IRS issues before they formally assess the tax against you. Basically, they say that they believe that you owe more tax. One of the most popular notices as to the proposed changes, would be CP 2000, by which the IRS basically stating that their records do not match to the numbers on your tax return, and therefore they believe that you owe more tax. Why does it say proposed changes? It's because you are given an opportunity to challenge their proposed changes if you believe that there is a mistake. Otherwise, you can just agree to the proposed changes and move on to the next stage, which would be assessment. So the IRS cannot collect taxes from you until they actually formally assess the tax. And they do this by sending a balance due notice. The most popular, well-known notice as balance due notice for individuals would be CP 14. In CP 14, they are stating that we processed your tax return and this is what the balance due. Similar notices you will see if the IRS wants to assess the additional penalties and interest if, for instance, you did not file your tax return on time or you didn't pay taxes on time. Then after the assessment happens and the IRS issues a balance due notice, then we are moving into the post-assessment stage of the collection notices. So by issuing a collection notice, as IRS stating you owe the balance to the IRS, however, you didn't make the payment and we do expect you to make that payment. One of the well-known notices in the collection would be CP 501, which would be kind of like an early reminder of your balance. That notice would be followed by CP 503, CP 504, and even final collection final notice that would precede any levies and tax liens. IRS has hundreds of notices, and you can actually read about the notices on their website, irs.gov, and I will leave the link below. However, almost all the notices, they have some key parts that you need to understand and to know about in order to, first of all, find the notice on the IRS website, or to understand what the notice is about, or even to talk to a tax professional to clearly explain what you received and why you are concerned and how you would proceed. So let's talk about those key parts of the IRS notices, and we will talk on two samples. One is proposed changes notice CP 2000, and another one is a balance due notice CP 14. So let's look at this. All right, so CP 2000, first of all, you need to make sure that this is a notice that is addressed for you. Therefore, you need to ensure that it's your name on the notice and the address. The notices, IRS notices, also include the identification number, which would be Social Security number for individuals, and employer identification number for businesses. In this case, on the notice, just because it's a sample, you just just see all the access on it. But I will tell you that IRS, due to security issues, when they state the social security number, they now most of the time state just the last 4 digits. But again, you can check that. Next, notice number. To understand what the notice is about, you need to know the notice number, and that information you will find at the top or bottom corner. And in this example, we have notice CP 2000 is in the top right corner, and it's clearly states CP 2000. Next, you need to know the tax year involved. So make sure the notice is actually referencing a year you actually filed for. And in this case, it would state tax year, and it's for 2021. But make sure that you do not confuse this date with the date of the notice. So if you see notice date is actually the date when the notice was issued, and in this example, it would be February 2024. Next, an explanation or reason for that notice. So here we have, again, remember, CP 2000 is about proposed changes to your tax return. And that's exactly what the IRS states. They propose changes to the taxpayer's 2021 Form 1040 tax return, which would be individual federal income tax return. And remember, proposed changes notice is not about the bill, but this is just proposed changes, and therefore the notice here clearly states this is not a bill. Next would be amount owed or proposed to be assessed. And since this is proposed changes, we have actually proposed amount of $338. And below, as you could see, it's actually a summary. So how much of proposed taxes and interest of $40, and it comes to $338. Okay, so now we came to the most important, crucial part of the notice, which would be the deadline. And deadline is very critical because if you miss the deadline, you may have negative consequences. Deadlines are usually have the notices have deadlines of 30 days or less. Let's look in this case. And usually you have kind of to look through the notice. And here's it says what you need to do immediately. If you agree with the proposed changes, the deadline, here it is, March 21st, 2024. If you don't agree with the proposed changes, same deadline, please send the information to the IRS explaining why you do not agree, and definitely send that documentation that would support your position. Now, most of the notices could be quite long, and I'm saying most, not all of them. So I encourage you to read the entire notice just to ensure that you do not miss any instructions. Like, for instance, in this notice, CP 2000, the instructions would include an explanation why they believe the taxpayer actually owes additional tax. And in this case, it looks like, and this explains on page 3, the IRS explains that seems like taxpayer didn't report all the taxable wages. Specifically, the taxpayers didn't include $1,068 in the additional income. All right, so let's now look at the notice CP 14, just for the example. And let's run first through the key parts, right? Make sure this is a notice issued to you. Look at your name, address, social security number, or EIN. Look at the notice number, tax year, explanation or reason, amount owed, and deadline. So let's look quickly through CP 14. First, make sure that you have a notice addressed to you. Look at the notice number, which is in this case, again, it's the top right corner. Make sure you understand which tax year or tax years are involved. And here we have 2023. Then don't confuse it with the date of the notice. Next, understand the explanation or reason for the notice. And here we have IRS claiming that the records show that the taxpayer filed the tax return for 2023, but with amount owed, meaning not the entire balance has been paid. How much money involved? Well, in this case, we have 8,710. And here IRS on the same page explains how IRS actually came to this number. So included the explanation. And next, the last, right, the crucial element or the crucial part of the notice, which would be deadline. Well, this notice, CP14, is actually one the notice which states, well, act as soon as possible, or as IRS says, right now. If you look through the notice, you actually will not find the specific deadline because IRS wants you to pay right now. So as you understand, now you are understanding all the key parts of the notice, you know how to read it and you know what to do next. But most important, remember, every IRS notice deserves your attention. So go down when you receive the notice, look at the notice, understand what the notice is about, and then act. Taking an action on the IRS notice is very important because you may come to a negative consequences. Now, all notices actually require action? No. However, you need definitely determine what type of action needs to be taken. What type of action can be taken? It could be writing a letter to the IRS with additional documentation, setting up a payment plan, contacting tax professional to understand what's going on or to receive assistance, or maybe do nothing. And one of the examples of do nothing notices would be the notice stating that you actually were entitled to a refund, a tax refund. However, because you had unpaid tax balances for the prior years, the IRS actually seizes your tax refund and applies to past due taxes for prior years. Again, you need to understand the notice and you need to act on it. And if you do not act, the negative consequences can be including the levies on your bank account, garnishment of your wages, filing the tax lien, or an assessment of the tax that you do not owe. That could be a mistake or incorrect information reported to IRS. So remember, you need to understand how to act and then make sure that you act within the deadline established in the notice. The truth is, dealing with the IRS is a process, and as sooner you understand the process, the easier it will be for you to get through the process without less as possible negative consequences. Now you can say, well, why don't they make the IRS notices easier? And I hear you and I understand. And therefore, I will be working on the series of the videos about the most common IRS notices. Thus, if you want to know more about it, please subscribe. Now, I hope this video actually gave you a sufficient amount of information to know about the IRS notices and not to panic when you receive them. So remember, when you receive the IRS notice, don't panic, pause, understand, and act. And I will see you in our next videos.